I'm curious, are you here because you're more interested in learning about blood sugar or about hormones in general? Drop a comment in the chat box and let me know. Christina says hormones. Yeah, yeah. Anybody else want to weigh in on that? Are you more interested in learning about hormones in general? Okay. Hormones. All right. All of it. Melanie, I love that. All of it. Mainly blood sugar, but also how the two correlate. Oh my goodness. Okay. We'll see what we can do with that. Let's get the show on the road then. Thank you for dropping those comments in there. I really appreciate that. So we are going to be talking tonight about iridology and looking at what we see in an eye, one of the key markers that gives us actually information about both hormone balance and blood sugar risks. Kind of one and the same, because we're talking about the endocrine system. So I am curious, how many of you have got training in iridology? And let me rephrase that better. Do you have training in iridology, or are you pretty new to it? So if you're pretty new, just put new in the chat box. And if you've got some formal training, drop trained in the chat box. New-ish, that's perfectly great. Newish. So it looks like we've got a really heavy leaning towards new people. I'm so glad you're here. So glad you're here. I can give you the lowdown. All right. And give you a good little introduction. Certainly, we're not going to be able to go so deep that you'll be totally proficient. But yes, you will learn something you can start using with your very next client. How does that sound? How many of you are working with clients, nutrition or herbs or something like that? Put clients in the chat box if you are currently working with clients. Clients, fantastic. Okay, good. Yeah. What I'm going to show you tonight, what I'm going to teach you tonight, you will be able to use with your very next client. This is so, so important. Now, a few things that we need to be really aware of are, when we do iridology, we are never going to diagnose a disease. We're never going to name a disease. When we see a marker in an eye, it tells us, depending on what that marker is, that there is a genetic predisposition towards an imbalance of some sort in that area. So the marker I'm going to show you tonight is going to teach you about imbalances with the hormones. And of course, insulin is a hormone, right? All right. So as we do this, I'm just going to drop this little bug in the back of your brain here that the next full-on course of dynamic iridology will be starting on September 3rd. We'll talk a little bit more about this later on. And so if you're interested in more information, either grab that link or snap that QR code. And I'm going to drop that link in the chat box so you can grab that and copy it to your notepad, so that if you want more information as we go through here today, you can reach out to me and we can talk about it. We're going to cover a lot of content today. We're going to do a lot of cases. We're going to look at a lot of eyes, right? So all of these are various types of blue eyes. But do you notice as you look at them that there is a difference in how the fibers are sitting in each of these eyes? Can you see that these eyes are very distinctly different in many different ways? If you can see that, give me I see in the chat box. I want to make sure you're getting this as we're going, right? You see? Okay, excellent. That is absolutely critical, because while there are many markers that will teach us about hormone imbalance or the risk of hormone imbalance, eyes are also very different. And so we're only going to learn one of those signs tonight, but you're going to learn it well. So when we look at eyes, we are looking for particular things. And one of the things we're looking for is what we call the subtype. These are all blue eyes. That means they share certain traits, certain tendencies towards certain traits. When we look at how the fibers are sitting in the eye, and do we have wrinkles in the eye, or do we have wavy fibers, or do we have gaps in the eye, open sort of leaf shapes and flower petals in the eyes, those all define subtypes. and it's the subtype that we are wanting to look at tonight. Specifically, we are going to be looking at what we call the polyglandular subtype. Okay, and we're going to look at that, and we're going to look at this in a way that will hopefully inspire you to use this in your work with your clients, because it can give you a lot of information. Now, I do want to be clear. This person and this person and this person can still have hormonal imbalances and or blood sugar imbalances. They might earn the right to have those imbalances, right? If you do a junk food diet, you can earn the right to have any problem regardless of what your genetic predispositions are. Do you agree? Do you agree with that? You can take a perfectly good set of genes and you can ruin them. Well, not ruin them, but you can make them misbehave by not taking care of them. This person has lovely genes. Their genes are suggesting they are more prone to hormonal imbalances, including blood sugars. Okay, we're going to look at a whole bunch of, oops, there we go. So let's start with this right now. I'll introduce myself later for those of you who might be new to me. I just want to dive right in. I get so excited about iridology and teaching iridology. This is absolutely my passion. I love working with my clients as well. I love teaching, and even my client work is, I consider it to be teaching. So we're going to just skim the surface of this. Let me introduce you to this client. This is a young woman. She is in her early 20s. She and her mom and her brother have been clients of mine for about 8 years, right? Which is nice. It's nice to have those long-term clients. Notice that she has many of these leaf shapes or petal shapes attached to this fiber coming around here. So there's kind of an anchor fiber that these petal shapes are attached to. When we have that, that is our polyglandular eye. Now, each one of these correlates to a different body part. However, it is very important to remember when we have this many of these in an eye, we are not going to assess each one individually. Okay, that would be overwhelming for you as a practitioner and for your client here. You've got a problem, 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 you've got, you know, because that's just not true. It's just not true. Instead, we take that step back and we look at this and we go, this suggests an overarching predisposition towards hormones being imbalanced. Now, this young lady is extremely careful with her diet. She has a lot of digestive insufficiencies and inefficiencies, and those show up in different areas of her eye as well. I have to be very careful the herbs that I recommend, because the herb that is generally totally safe for everybody, she'll end up with stomach cramps. So we go very slowly and very methodically with her. Her hormones in general are not really well balanced. She has got serious dysmenorrhea, so really painful periods, which often there can be structural issues. She's had that all looked at and there's nothing wrong. She's had all the labs done and the doctors say there's nothing wrong. And yet she has such painful periods that she vomits with them. She'll spend a couple of days each month literally curled up in a fetal position, resorting to pharmaceuticals because it's the only thing that takes the pain away, and vomiting her guts out, literally. She started her periods a little late. She was 16 when they started. Her average cycles are 35 to 60 days. And the cramping, the dysmenorrhea, actually starts 4 days before her period and lasts for 4 days, the first 4 days of her menses. 8 days. 8 days. But that's a quarter of her life when she's got a regular length cycle. But the fact that she has some cycles that are running up to 60 days suggests to me that in spite of her good diet, she may be flirting with PCOS. Are you familiar with PCOS? If you are not, give me no in the chat box. Otherwise, I'll assume that you are. PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, Okay, it's a hormonal imbalance, often linked very closely to insulin resistance, right? And often there's lots of little imbalances involved and creating, really creating a perfect storm here. She has to eat frequently. And when she has her period, she's using naproxen, Tylenol, Advil, but she's getting to the point where she's been using those things now for about 7 years and they're not working anymore. Totally brutal. We really work hard with her on her diet. She's got a lot of food sensitivities, including milk and gluten, and she is totally dairy-free and gluten-free. She also finds that fatty foods give her diarrhea. When we hear symptoms like that, we may need to look at individual openings. These are called lacunae. We may need to look at individual lacunae. And so when we look at her pattern of her lacunae, and we look at it with an iridology map, and we see, oh, well, look, she's got a lacuna right here sitting in the gallbladder and expanding over to the liver area. She's got this bulge right here that's pressing on a liver area. She's got another little lacuna here sitting in the liver area. So, her liver might be really unhappy. That's going to contribute to allergies. That's also going to contribute to an inability to create and secrete enough bile to emulsify the fats well. So when she eats something fatty, she'll get diarrhea. Is this all making sense so far? If it is, give me a makes sense in the chat box. Yes, yes. So good, so good. So where we started with her, and we've been actually working for years, and we see episodes or lengths of time where things are really actually doing quite well, where she's doesn't have comfortable periods, but she's not taking drugs and she's not vomiting. I mean, that's a good month for her. Painful, but I can handle it kind of the stuff, right? So what we've done is we've started with her working from the perspective of, I wonder if we're looking at PCOS, because PCOS can also make cramping and worse, and the liver will be out of balance, and there's a lot of things. So we started increasing the amount of protein she was getting every day, both number of servings and serving size, aiming for about 80 to 90 grams of protein a day. And also then had to figure out what could we give her to help her digest that protein really well, because her eyes tell us she doesn't want to do that. Also suggested using a mineral supplement. And so we've got with some of the product lines I work with, we've got some lovely options for different mineral supplements. Also suggested using a herbal formula for the hormones, particularly it was wild yam with chase tree, and that was working really well for her as well. Also gave her some omega-3. So that's an oily supplement, and she was able to handle it even with that liver, even with the fatty foods caveat there. And we got her some vitamin D. So the most recent time we worked with her and we instituted these changes, and we keep tweaking things. Every time I meet with her, we tweak. So this last time when her period was so awful, it had kind of backslid, we put these in. She sent me an email saying things are working better. Painful, yes, but no drugs needed, not vomiting. So I can manage this. So it sometimes takes a little while, but we know then from what we see with all of these lacunae that she's just prone to hormone imbalance, and it's going to take a lot of effort on an ongoing basis. This isn't something we're just going to give her a magic formula, it's going to be fixed and she never needs to do anything positive again, right? We are discovering for her the kinds of things that work for her to help regulate, to help reduce the pain, to help her be comfortable, and to help moderate the flow, and all these kinds of good things. Now, one of the things, okay, so Emily's saying, my chart doesn't show a liver area for the left eye. What chart do you use? My chart is the one that originally it was developed by Bill Cardona, who was my instructor in constitutional. If your chart is only showing one liver area, you've probably been taught by a Jensen instructor, not a constitutional instructor. The constitutional puts the liver in 3 places. Bill's chart came out about 25 years ago. No longer than that, because he was my instructor 35 years ago. And so, but about 20 years ago, I asked him if I could work with updating his chart, because there's been a lot of new research. So we finally got around to that about 8 or 9 years ago. And so we're using my chart, the dynamic iridology map that shows the liver in 3 places. In addition to that, my map cuts out anything that doesn't have a metabolic involvement. So we've taken out arm, leg, foot, outer ear, things like that, because it doesn't matter when we're working constitutionally if the foot has a problem, right? So I just wanted to show you this, because you will see online, you'll see people showing before and after photos and talking about the healing and how the photos prove that they've healed. These are all the same person. So this and this, it's obvious, the same color. We can match up where the lacunae are. But notice here that there's a slight difference in the pupil size. Pupil's really big, then it gets smaller. This is the same person. This is the same person. Different camera, different lighting setup. That alone accounts for the difference in the color. The different lighting setup that is so much brighter pulls the pupil down, makes the pupil smaller, and that makes it look like the lacuna have changed shape, when in reality, and maybe even changed size, when in reality they have not. Does that make sense? That the changes we're seeing here are because of changes in technology? That is absolutely critical for you to know, because a lot of people will post images taken with different cameras and different lighting and talk about the healing they've experienced because they did this, $5,000 herbal package, when in actual fact, if you could see their eyes actually reshoot their photos using the same camera they used the first time, you'd find there'd be no change. Because the irides are genetic, they are not dynamic. The irides are not going to change. You're not going to make things disappear with diet or supplements. How many of you, is that a new idea? Emily says, yes, I was taught that only pigments increase slightly, but nothing ever leaves. Yeah, that's great, Emily. That is so good. So good. Pigments can actually increase significantly. I've got some before and after photos that are quite interesting that show significant pigment acquisition. Here's another one of my clients. Look at how polyglandular she is. Lots of lacunae attached to her collarette. That fiber coming around is called the collarette. Now, for those of you who aren't professional iridologists and you might not have a professional camera, all you need is a lighted magnifying glass. Okay. Christina says, what causes the eye color to change and get lighter? Sometimes our eye color fades as we get older, just like we lose pigment from our hair, and our skin will often get lighter. And that's the only thing. That's the only thing. Right. So eye color doesn't typically change much. Can you suggest a place to buy that? To buy what, Melanie? The lighted magnifying glass? Yep. My website, iridology.education, has them. Okay. All right. So this is another one of my clients. Remember, she's polyglandular. That means she's going to be predisposed to hormone imbalances, including insulin and cortisol. Okay. One of the things I want you to keep in mind here is that people who are polyglandular often have a creative streak. Tuck that into the back of your brain, because it's an important thing. Female, age 65, strong history of depression. She's health conscious, but her weight has been creeping up and she feels very lethargic. She's a vegan, which really makes it hard to get enough protein into her. She has a sedentary lifestyle. That's not really helpful for keeping all the hormones balanced either. And she's had a lot of stress in her life, including just recently. So what did we do with her? Well, we needed to bump up her protein using vegan sources. That meant that we were going to plant-based protein powders, things like that, because she was absolutely not willing to even eat eggs, right? So we had to think, and she won't do bone broth. we had to just try to pump her up using protein powders. She lives alone, so it's really hard for her to cook enough of anything to be interested in it, right? Now, giving her the protein powders, we needed to then support her digestion. Again, there are things in her eyes that say she doesn't digest protein well. But as we get older, we need more protein. For that exact reason, we don't digest it well. And that means we don't get the aminos we need to do the rebuilding and the repair that we need. So we had to give her something to help with digesting. And I encouraged her to go for a walk every day. Now, I also needed to get to her to work with her on an emotional level, right? She was really stressed. She'd moved to a new town. She was feeling very isolated. So I asked her what she likes to do. And she said, well, I like to go for walks. And I said, well, that's great. Is there a good place for you to go for walks where you live now? She said, yeah, my condo backs onto a green space that's right on a river. And I said, great. How would it be for you to go for a daily walk there? She said, yeah, I could do that. I said, fantastic. Now, what do you like to do when you're going for a walk? And she said, I like to observe things. What kinds of things do you like to observe? I like to pay attention to little things. So what do you mean by little things? Oh, tiny flowers, little insects. I said, that is so cool. So what do you do when you see something that's tiny? She said, well, I take a picture of it. I said, okay, that's great. I said, I think you've got an artistic side. How do you feel about drawing? She said, I really like to draw. Are you drawing anything now? No, I'm not. How would you feel about getting just a little 4-inch by 5-inch sketch pad from just the dollar store and pencils or whatever you want for drawing with? When you go for a walk, find something small. If something small catches your attention, just sit down on the ground right there and take 3 minutes to draw it out. And she went, oh, I could never do that. I said, this isn't for anybody. Nobody's going to look at it. Could you do it if it was just for you? Well, as long as you're not going to ask to see it. I won't ask to see it, but I'm going to ask if you're doing it. She said, okay, I can do that. So that was her homework. Protein, hydrochloric acid to help her digest her protein, and start sketching. Funny thing, about 2 months later, when I saw her again, I asked her, how's it going? Are you getting out for your walks? Oh, yeah. And what's happening with that? Well, I'm walking longer, I'm walking further, and I'm taking time to draw. And I asked her, well, how is that working for you? And she said, I love it. I've got something to do now. I've got a purpose. I've got something I can play with. And she said, I love it. It's given me a reason to have better energy. So I am doing better with my protein. I'm taking the HCl you said I should take. I'm feeling so good and my energy's coming up. Fantastic. This is going to be something that as she continues to work with it, it's going to help her to keep from packing on the pounds. It's going to help to keep her blood sugars balanced. It's going to help her fight the depression, right? All of these good things, just simply because I could see she was polyglandular. Now, did you notice I didn't say your blood sugars are unbalanced? I can't see that from the eyes. I can sort of figure it out because her energy's low, she's gaining weight, she's depressed. I kind of know her blood sugars are imbalanced from those things, right? But using those things, I could then ask her the questions that I needed to ask to get her to where we needed to go to find recommendations that would resonate with her. Does that make sense? Emily says, I love how you help her work with her emotion and her self-esteem. If we don't work with the emotional side, anything we do physically is just a Band-Aid, and that Band-Aid will fall off. Oh, Emily, absolutely. She's always been low in stomach acid. Her eyes are say that point blank, right? And so that's why I had to give her HCl, right? Absolutely critical for her. And considering her age, she needed HCl anyways, but because we were bumping up her protein every day, she needed more HCl to make sure she could handle that protein, get the building blocks, get the aminos. The protein will help to balance the blood sugars. Protein will help her to repair tissue, right? So important in so many ways. Is this making sense? Are you seeing from this how things connect? Christina says, do I give HCL to someone who's also dealing with GERD? So I want to know more about them, because so many people who are diagnosed with GERD are diagnosed only by symptom. Okay, now that's a problem. That's a problem because anything refluxing up the esophagus is going to cause pressure, pain, and burning, whether it's too acidic or not. So doctors give the proton pump inhibitors, which shut down the protein digestion, which ultimately messes with the bones and messes with the hormones and messes with everything. And so I will often ask my clients who have a diagnosis of GERD, have they been scoped? And if they have, and they have that diagnosis, then okay, we'll figure out a way to work with this. But if they have not been scoped, I will ask them to consider something. I don't tell them to do this, but I will ask them to consider, how would you feel about doing an experiment? And the experiment would look like this. And I'm not telling you to do this. I'm just asking, how would you feel if? How would you feel about pausing? Notice I didn't say stop. Pausing your PPI for a couple of weeks while we experiment with low doses of digestive supports. 95% of the time my clients go, well, the PPIs aren't working anyways. I still have problems. I was like, okay, so how do you feel then? Do you want to do an experiment, or do you want to just keep using the PPIs? And seriously, it's always, let's do the experiment because the PPIs aren't working, right? So we'll experiment. We'll have them come off it completely, give their body a few days to resettle with nothing, and then start experimenting with a little bit of this or a little bit of that and gradually increase it, but monitor symptoms to see, does anything come back to bite them, right? So very, very careful there. All right, let's look at some more eyes. Oops, we skipped one. This is who we wanted. Here again, this is a gentleman in his mid-60s, really a sweetheart of a guy. Such a sweetheart that the other people in his Kiwanis Club, and he's been in this is the oldest chapter of Kiwanis Club in his city, and they've been together for like 40 years. And so all these guys are retired oil guys, and they just love what they do with the Kiwanis, but everyone calls him Mother Bob, because he takes care of everybody. And he is a gentle, sweet soul. He wants everyone to have what they need, and he likes to help them get what they need. But when he came in to see me, because of his age and because I was familiar with his Kiwanis Club group, I'd met them a couple of times, and because of things I see in his eyes, including the fact that he has lacunae attached to his collarette, I knew I needed to check his blood pressure. Okay, there's a couple of markings that point me in that direction. And so I checked his blood pressure and it was elevated. Like, we're talking, if his doctor had taken his blood pressure, there would have been a riot act, right? It would have been significant. And so as we looked at his blood pressure, I didn't tell him it was high. I told him, this is what healthy blood pressure should be. I want you to look at the machine and tell me the numbers you see. So he told me the numbers. And I said, how does that sound to you? If the healthy range is here and your numbers are there, what do you think? He said, oh man, mine's high. So I didn't say it was high. He said it was high. Okay. And so then I said, we can deal with this. There's lots of things we can do naturally to get this under control. And that was going to mean, again, working with his endocrine system and his liver and fixing his diet. There was a lot to do, right? And so he said, well, absolutely. I said, I have to tell you, you have to go see your doctor. Legally, because I can't diagnose and I can't legally treat this, I have to tell you to see your doctor. He said, well, I don't want to do that. I said, okay, that's totally up to you. But if you do, I knew what was going to happen. The doctor's going to put you on drugs. You're going in kicking and screaming, saying, I don't want to do the drugs, but the drugs are going to take the high blood pressure down, and it's easier than doing the homework I'm going to give you. And you'll probably then just opt for the drugs. He said, no, I would never do that. Well, it's exactly what he did. As we worked in that first month between when I saw him and we ascertained that his blood pressure was high. And when I saw him for a follow-up, the recommendations were all about balancing his blood sugar. So there was going to be diet work, some supplements to help him keep his blood sugars balanced, get that insulin into check, things that would help to begin bringing his cholesterol down and things like that, because there's indicators here that his cholesterol could be elevated as well. And so it happened exactly like I said. He came in on the drugs. He said, I don't want to be on these. And I said, okay, so how are you doing with the homework? Well, I didn't start any of it yet. It's been a whole month. Let's get on it. And that was it. It was easier to take the pills. But I could see from his eyes again that his blood sugars were unbalanced. When we've got unbalanced blood sugars, it almost always leads to dyslipidemia, right? And it's not uncommon for those to be paired with high blood pressure, with high blood pressure. So that was where we were with him. Do the kidney? Yeah, absolutely, Emily. Yes, we can certainly look for kidney markers here as well when we're looking at blood pressure. Absolutely, absolutely. Here is another one of my clients. She was in her 30s, late 30s. She came in, she was overweight. She'd had a medical diagnosis of PCOS. I was not surprised. I mean, I've seen women who have PCOS that were not polyglandular. There are some other markings that can help us understand why a non-polyglandular woman would have PCOS as well. But this client, absolutely, lots of closed lacunae attached to the collarette. Hormone imbalance, again, PCOS, we're looking at estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, insulin as being the endocrine markers that will be out of balance. And so, again, we started working with diet and physical activity, getting out for a 30-minute walk every day. Some people will say, I can't do 30 minutes. I don't have that much time. And this woman was extremely busy. As a psychologist, she was working out of 3 different offices, and each of those offices worked with a different type of clientele, and she loved the variety. But it meant that she had some days where she was 5 or 6 hours at one office and then another 5 or 6 hours at the other office. So she was not getting time to take care of herself, which as a psychologist, she would really need. And so we often, with her, it was like, okay, if you can't do 30 minutes in one stretch, can you do 3 10 minutes? Can you park a little further away from the clinic, and can you walk 10 minutes to get there? And then 10 minutes back to your car, go to the next clinic. Again, park a little ways away, so you're getting 5 or 10 minute walk in and a 5 or 10 minute walk out. And so we found some little strategies like that could be very useful for her. But the dead giveaway again was all of these lacunae attached to that collarette suggest risk of endocrine imbalance. And really, what I'm seeing is endocrine imbalance almost always, nowadays, almost always means blood sugars, right? And if you've got a woman and the blood sugars are out of balance and she's in her reproductive years, that's likely going to push her towards PCOS. Make sense? Give me a make sense in the chat box. Sharon says, yes. Emily says, this is fascinating. Yeah, it's so important to be working with. Christina says, yes. So makes sense, says Melanie. So good, so good. I'm glad I haven't put you to sleep yet. This is good. Okay, so this is someone who's very dear to my heart. She's one of my daughters-in-law. And so I've known her story for many years. She and my son have been married for 20 years, because their oldest is just turning 16. So they've been married for at least 20 years. When they were engaged, she started gaining weight like crazy, like seriously gained weight, put on about 60 pounds when they were dating and got engaged, and before they got married. And they were only engaged. They knew each other for about 3 or 4 months before they got engaged, and they were only engaged for about 3 or 4 months before they got married. So it wasn't a very long time that she gained all that weight. And then they wanted to have babies. And so she tried, and she couldn't get pregnant. And then she did get pregnant, and she had an ectopic pregnancy. which was devastating to her because they really wanted that baby. And it meant that she had to have surgery to have that fallopian tube removed, right? Because a fallopian tube that bursts is no longer useful. And so it was not a great scenario for her. And then she finally found a doctor who ran some blood tests and actually knew about PCOS, which 20 years ago, 25 years ago was unheard of. Doctors didn't really know much about it. And he said, yeah, I think you've got PCOS. So she came to see me and she said, Mom, what do I do? I said, well, we got some diet work to do with you. So we cleaned up her diet. And I'll tell you, I've never seen anyone follow instructions more precisely than she did. Like, there was not one bit of refined food that passed her lips. She cut out everything that I said, you need to cut these out. You need to focus on protein and veggies, and these are the kinds of veggies, and we need good fats. And it was just perfection, absolute perfection. You know, birthday, absolutely no way was she having birthday cake. Like, we really had to work with her. Emily says, how do you interpret a very defined ropey autonomic nerve? Well, that's a topic for a different webinar, Emily. That's a topic for a different webinar. So with this daughter, she went on this really cleaned up diet, and on the right supplements, she lost 60 pounds in 6 months. Like, it just fell off, 10 pounds a month. And she wasn't even hungry. She was able to conceive. They now have 5 children. However, between baby number 4 and baby number 5, there is about an 8-year gap when she couldn't get pregnant because she had stopped doing all the things we had talked about and she had regained all the weight. She was now defined as being type 2 diabetic and on oral insulin. So she's on metformin, and she needed the metformin to help her get pregnant. She was not in a mental state to be able to lock down her diet with 4 very busy children that she was homeschooling. So that's where she's at now. But again, look at the closed lacunae that are attached to the collarette. Just the fact that we've got so many of them here means predisposition towards endocrine imbalance, hormones, and blood sugars, right? And when we know that, we know we need to work on it. So I want to ask you, when you've got someone who you recognize the symptoms of being hormone imbalance, this is a big category. What is your number one specific recommendation that you make for them? Is there one particular food category or food that you take away that you say you need to quit that because it's not helpful? I want you to think about that for just a second. Is there one particular thing you like to teach them about that's not healthy for them? I'm hoping there's lightning fingers going there, working on sending in an answer. Processed foods. Yeah, that's a really good one, because almost all the processed foods has refined sugars in it. Refined food, sugar. Yeah, absolutely. Get rid of those refined carbs and the refined foods as much as you can. Yeah, absolutely. Excellent. Totally on track. The other thing that I like to get rid of is coffee, because it creates so many metabolic imbalances in the body. And once they get off it, they usually are going, whoa, if I'd known I'd feel this good for not drinking coffee, I'd have quit years ago, right? This is another one of my clients who's been with me for, she was one of my very first clients. She's been with me for 45 years. 45 years. Very cool. Very cool to have some clients that have been with me all along, even when I didn't know very much, right? I'm not saying I know a ton now, but I know a whole lot more than I did 45 years ago, right? And so with this client, when she started working with me, her concern was she was extremely constipated. She had really bad PMS and really horrible skin. We got all of that cleaned up. Several years later, she got married. She had a couple of kids. I think she had 3 boys. And the diet, the boys were into hockey. So there was a lot of chauffeuring to and from hockey rinks, a lot of eating hockey rink food, right? And that was her undoing. She gained a lot of weight. She is, our last meeting, she was 100 pounds overweight, weighing 275, right? 175 is actually overweight for her, but 175, we'd be happy with 175, right? So as we look at her, notice she doesn't have nearly as many of the closed lacunae, but she's got enough for us to know that blood sugars are a risk. Now, she is postmenopausal. She is 65. And so we know her blood sugars are in trouble. And so it's the working with the blood sugars that is so, so important for her. Again, coaching her on food. Doctors just want to give her metformin, which she's taking. She tried the name escapes me. The new drugs, the GLP-1s. She tried one of those. It just gave her diarrhea. She couldn't even do 3 months on it because it made her so ill. And so we are simply, again, getting her back on track. Again, taking her back 45 years to the kinds of dietary work we did back then that got her system working better. Okay. Christina says, have you noticed a correlation with hormone imbalances and POTS? You know, I've only known one person who has POTS, and I will say that yes, I would say in that case there was a correlation. Her hormones were not well balanced. She did not have polyglandular eyes, but before she got married, her periods were also horrible to the point where she would, one of my daughters actually, she would pop in to say hi, and she would be starting her period, and she would literally go into a full-on catatonic muscular contraction where her whole body would seize up with the uterine cramping. She has just recently been diagnosed. She's 30. Oh, bad mother. I should know how old my child is, shouldn't I? I've got 7 kids. Please forgive me for not knowing how old they are. She's in her mid-30s, and she's been recently diagnosed as POTS. And I do suspect she's now got 2 kids, but I do suspect it is correlated to hormone imbalances with her. Yeah, I do. So because POTS, of course, is that postural orthostatic hypertension kind of thing, or hypotension, where you stand up and your blood sugar, or you stand for too long and your blood sugar can't hold you up and you collapse, right? And so for them, I often think it is endocrine in many cases, right? Insulin resistance play a role? I don't know. Like I said, I've only worked with one, and this daughter doesn't appear to have insulin resistance. She's not heavy. Her diet's not perfect, but I don't believe she has insulin resistance. So I don't know. So you would be wondering if hypoglycemia, perhaps, or hyperglycemia, one or the other, not getting the blood sugars into the cells appropriately, might be leading to some further things. And there's a distinct possibility, but I can't speak from experience on that one. This is another one of my clients. She's also been with me for 45 years. I just love these clients that I've had for so long. There's that level of friendship here, right? In spite of it being a professional relationship. We were having babies at the same time, and she's got a lot of training behind her. When you look at her, she's not polyglandular, right? She's not polyglandular. She doesn't have the lacunae attached to her, but she has enough liver imbalance that it's messed with her blood sugars, right? Liver and pancreas work together to keep the blood sugars balanced, and it's messed with her cholesterol, right? So she has high cholesterol, she has insulin resistance, she has high blood pressure. And in addition to that, she had a heart attack 3 years ago. And so now we're having to work very carefully around all of the meds that the doctors have just scared the daylights out of her. They tell her if she stops taking any of them, she'll die, right? And so we're having to work very carefully, more with foods than anything else, to see what progress we can make with her. So this is a good example of, while polyglandular says there's a definite predisposition towards hormonal imbalance, you don't have to be polyglandular to have hormonal imbalances, right? You can earn the right to have them. And sadly, she did. Her husband is retired. He does most of the cooking and has done for many years. And he cooks what he wants, not what she needs. Right? And so that's a problem. That's a problem. This fellow, yes, he's in his early 60s. He's been a client of mine for about 10 years, started coming years ago, then kind of dropped off for many years, then started coming back in 2022, when his doctor said, oh, guess what? Your blood is coming back with elevated hemoglobin A1C. You've got high blood pressure. You've got insulin resistance. You've got high cholesterol. And he was on at least 5 drugs at the time. They put him on 5 drugs to manage that. And he came in, he goes, I should have been doing all the right stuff all along and I didn't. So what do I do now? So we've got him on a program. So since 2022, when his hemoglobin A1C was 7.2, anything over 5.9 is diabetes, is type 2 diabetes. Since then, he's done Glumetza, hydrochlorothiazide for blood pressure, Trendolapril as an ACE inhibitor, myelin, atorvastatin for cholesterol. And because he's on all these things to reduce his blood pressure, he had to go on Viagra so that he could be intimate with his wife. So 6 medications. April 2022, hemoglobin A1C of 7.2. We cleaned up his diet, radically cleaned up his diet, got him to be physically active. September 2022, we had the hemoglobin A1C down to 6. We dropped at 1.2 full points. July 2023, we had him down to 5.8. At that point, his doctor said, well, you do not need the Glumetza anymore. You do not need I think they took him off the hydrochlorothiazide, and they took him off the atorvastatin. So now he's only on, no, he's still on atorvastatin. They took him off the Trendolapril, and they've got him on a different ACE inhibitor now. So he's down to 2 meds plus the Viagra, right? And so we're continuing to work to refine the diet to keep him active, to get him to be a little more active. But again, notice he's not polyglandular. He earned the right to have the blood sugar issues by having a sedentary lifestyle, eating fast food and junk food. His wife is a flight attendant, so she's gone for 4 days at a stretch. So when he's batching it, it's pizza, or it's pasta, white pasta, or it's Subway. Yeah, it's not good food. So we've got that changed. He now cooks for himself when his wife is away, and he cooks for her when she's home, which is lovely because she needs the better nutrition as well, right? But we've got all of his numbers improving, and his doctor keeps saying, you keep doing this and we'll have you off all of the meds within the next year or 2. So this is good. This is so good. All right. So, hey, that was a lot of stuff. I'm going to introduce myself. Then we've got a few more eyes to look at. You've been listening to me for the last 45 minutes. Thank you for that. I am an IPA certified level 3 iridology instructor. Currently, there are only 3 levels. That's the highest level. There are only 10 level 3 instructors in the world. And we have to update our credentials every 2 years, and they give us badges every 2 years. So here's my last 4 years worth of badges. And they've just started doing that right here. So I don't have anything before that, even though I was certified before that. I love teaching. I'm also a professional member of the Canadian Association of Holistic Nutrition Professionals and the Canadian Association of Natural Nutritional Practitioners. And some of you may also be members there. Also a professional member of the Alberta Herbalist Association. How many of you are nutrition professionals? Just give me a yes in the chat box. Just another quick reminder of the upcoming course. Yes, yes. Oh, this is so good. So good. Iridology works so well with nutrition. It works so well. Next course is again starting on September 3rd. This is what one of my students said. Elaine Hedden is a holistic physiotherapist. She says, I'm a holistic physical therapist and have wanted to study iridology for years, but just couldn't find the right instructor or school. Judith Cobb's iridology course has been the perfect fit. The caliber and organization of the coursework is professional. Her depth and breadth of knowledge of iridology, herbals, nutrition, and pathology is beyond most instructors and even some university professors. If you're a health professional wanting to expand your scope of practice by learning about the most up-to-date information on iridology, take this course. I only take 10 students. This is another one of my clients. And Michelle has been with me for about 25 years. I helped her and her husband get ready to have babies. Their boys are now in their early 20s. She falls into two different subtypes, definitely connective tissue and definitely polyglandular. So we're not going to dive too much into connective tissue, except to point out something interesting. But you can see that she's got lots of lacunae attached to the collarette, right? But she's also got a very sloppy fiber structure. Everything looks woven and tangled. So the lacunae attached to the collarette is the polyglandular. The sloppy and tangled fiber structure is the connective tissue. She has also been gaining weight. She's in her late 50s. She's been gaining weight, and she doesn't like that one little bit. There's a family history of type 2 diabetes, and the doctor had recently diagnosed her as being insulin resistant. I wasn't at all surprised. There's so many indicators in here that she is in that situation, and that some of it is genetic and some of it she's earned the right to have. And so when I look at her eyes, again, I'm not looking at individual lacunae. There's just too many. We'd be here for a month of Sundays breaking this all down, and she would leave so depressed because it would sound like there was no hope, right? So instead we take that step back and we go, oh, we've got polyglandular. We need to work with your foods. And again, we did this years ago to get her ready to get pregnant. Life has changed. She's divorced now. Her ex-husband just recently passed away. She's supporting her two boys. Life has changed. And so her focus on wellness kind of disappeared. And so now it's very much a case of reinstating, reteaching, helping her to regain that you can't do 6 cups of coffee and call that breakfast and lunch, and then do boxed pasta for supper and think you're going to be healthy. We need to get some protein at breakfast. What could you do for protein? Oh, I'm not hungry in the morning. Okay, so let's talk about lunch then. Let's just get you eating lunch. What can we do with lunch? Could you have a little salad with a little bit of chicken or with a boiled egg? Not much, but she's not been eating breakfast or lunch. So we're having to create a new habit. So we start small. If I tell her she needs a 5-course meal at lunchtime, it's not going to happen. But if I can say, can you go to the grocery store and buy a boxed salad, and you can go to the deli and buy a roasted chicken? I know they're not perfect, but they're better than what she's doing now, which is nothing, right? So we start with where she's at. Could she do this? Yeah, she could do this. Great. Let's get that happening. When you get bored with the salad and the chicken, we need something to change it up. Can you change the salad dressing? Can you get a different kind of salad? Can you put a different kind of protein on it? Could you take some stir-fried veggies? Like, could you buy the pre-chopped veggies, saute them in a pan really quick, saute some beef strips, and do enough of that to last 2 or 3 days, and take some of that for lunch every day? Yeah, she could do that, right? So it's always about looking at the eyes and figuring out where are the imbalances and asking the questions. We knew what the imbalances were because she's gaining weight. She has no energy. She's struggling with depression. She's been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. We know where the imbalances are, right? So we can ask deeper questions, then we can start making recommendations. Again, suggesting, could you walk for 20 minutes a day? Let's get some physical activity happening there. She has an assistant at work, and I said, your assistant goes and gets you coffee, right? Yeah. Could you tell your assistant to not bring you coffee anymore? Could your assistant bring you some herb tea instead? She said, yeah, could do that. So again, looking for easy substitutions, easy things to switch to begin making the change, because a clean sweep is not going to work, right? Right. Another female client, she's 5'9", weighs 197 pounds, which is not terrible. Little overweight, but not bad. She is polyglandular. We've got those lacunae attached to the collarette. And again, she wants to deal with this weight. She's been gaining weight over the last 5 years. She's constantly bloated. She's got a lot of gut pain. The digestive areas don't look robust here. They never have been robust genetically. Her digestive areas are not, they lack integrity, and we need to support them to help them work better. And so she has frequent migraines, vertigo, dizziness, fibrocystic breasts. She has a yeast or bladder infection after every period. That alone tells you that her blood sugars are out to lunch, right? Absolutely. She's hypothyroid. Doctors have diagnosed that, and they've diagnosed her with Raynaud's. She's got sluggish bowels. She has a little bit of coffee in her diet, and sort of a coffee a day, maybe. It's not necessarily every day. Her symptoms are much more broad, and they're actually, it's more detailed, more in depth than just basic hormone imbalance, right? So when we look at what we need to do with her, what we needed to do first was clear out the candida, right? That yeast infection after every period, or the UTI after every period, is a yeast infection, right? I can't say, I think you have a yeast infection, but I could ask her, are you prone to yeast infections? Have you ever had to treat a yeast infection? Oh yeah, all the time. I wonder if that's what's happening after every period. Oh yeah, I think that's what's happening. I'm pretty sure, right? So I ask the questions and let the client give me the information. And I ask the questions based on the eyes, based on the symptoms, right? So we put her on an anti-candida program, which is really low carb, good proteins, good fats, really good complex carbs. And she felt so much better. In doing that, she said she only had one headache. She had been having like a headache a day, whether she needed one or not. She got down to one headache in the month, which is a huge improvement. Her energy was coming up. Her husband said he noticed she was sleeping better, because prior to going on that program, she was restless. She was snoring. She was just not having a good sleep. And he said, you're sleeping better. You're not wrestling with the sheets and blankets all night, and you're not snoring anymore. So that's great. Putting her on that diet cut out the cravings, and she was able to start working out again. Totally fixed the bladder issues, the yeast infections. What do I find causes headaches before ovulation and menstrual cycles? So hormone imbalance, usually hormone imbalance, and sometimes that's tied to a blood sugar issue. Right. So here's some things that some of my students have said about the dynamic iridology course. Peggy says, so worth it. Judith is hands-on, and how lucky on top of all the extras we can keep up with these Zoom mini classes. She's amazing. She's an amazing teacher. So grateful. Dawn Ball, who is a certified nutrition coach. Agree 100% with all the above comments. Read Judith's detailed teaching and the course. It's amazing. Jack Stegman, who is an EMT and an aromatherapist, says, best class I've ever taken. Chana Claren is a massage therapist. She says, if you'd like a holistic education for a holistic assessment, this class is for you. Chana goes on to say, Judith is a very thorough teacher, and she stretches and grows us as students. Veronica says, Veronica is an LPN. Course is incredible. Money is well worth to invest in yourself and your business. Learn from the best to be the best. I cannot express enough how it has changed my life in many ways. And I don't remember who this was, and I've cut off the name. Course is amazing, and Judith is an incredible teacher. Highly recommend for everyone. So very cool. When is your next webinar? The next one of these will be on August 6th, and you're here. That means you're on the mailing list. You will get the invitation. So the next full-on course is starting on September 3rd again. It is the only live, fully mentored course for health professionals who want to become certified as iridologists. If you want to be stopping working overtime with your clients, taking too long to create their programs, taking too long to do an assessment, if you want to get your assessments done and your first program for each of your clients done in 75 minutes or less, you need to learn iridology, right? It will also help you to learn how to not overwhelm your clients with too much information. How many of you might be guilty of that? Not knowing how much info to give, so you give everything you can, and your clients end up looking like deer in the headlights. I was guilty of that when I first learned iridology because I didn't know how to use it. Now that's what I teach. So the goal of dynamic iridology is to teach you constitutional iridology and how to use it competently so that you can easily integrate what you already know about nutrition and herbology. You could put an or in there instead if you don't know both, to confidently create doable client programs in your paid client sessions. So there we have it. You now know the most important first marker to look for hormone imbalance, whether you're looking for general hormones, reproductive hormones, or blood sugars. That polyglandular iris is what you're going to find. For all the ones where they weren't polyglandular, that's what we teach you in dynamic iridology, is how to think through an iris, how to put the pieces together with the symptoms to understand what are the markings that are going to help you understand your client better, to do more good for them. All righty. Any final questions before we wrap up? We are at the top of the hour. We are done. Any final questions or comments? I'll give you just 30 seconds to put that in. Again, grab that link or the QR code if you want to chat with me about the course. The course is 20 weeks long. And then after you finish the coursework, so we meet once a week for about 2.25 hours. After you finish the coursework, then there's a window of 10 months for you to complete the certification requirements. Christina, how much time do we have to do homework per week? So I encourage my students to put in a total of 6 hours per week, so about 2.25 to 2.5 for the class time. The balance of the time, 3.5 hours-ish for study and for practice is what I recommend. If you want to be really proficient by the end of the course, give it about 6 hours per week in total, right? And here's the beautiful thing is, if you are currently seeing clients, they will be excited to have you practice on them when you are working with them. So your practice time gets integrated into your client time. Right, so important, right? That's one of the things that I really stress, is that you need to begin applying what you learn as you learn it, and don't wait till the end of the course to start applying it. If you wait till the end of the course, you will forget it, and you will not do well in the certification process. The earlier you start applying it, and I mean after the first lesson, the better you'll do. All right? Perfect. Anything else? The only way to enroll in the course is to have a private one-on-one Zoom meeting with me. And that link that I've shared with you and the QR code will take you to my website. That'll give you more information about the course. And it'll have a link there where you can schedule a time to chat with me. Right? And it's not a high pressure sales call. It's just making sure this course is the right fit for you. Right? That's so important. I've loved the questions that you've posted here. So good. I love the interaction, and I really appreciate that because it tells me you're processing information. And that's always the sign of a student who's engaged and who really wants to learn. So thank you for that tonight. I appreciate it. I hope to speak with you soon, and watch your emails because the replay of this should be in your inbox tomorrow evening. Take good care, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.